It makes you play differently. A lot of guys freak out. You pick up a Falcon and it's like, whoa! But I just like the way they play. All I had was the guitar and a haircut, which is probably all you need. Yeah, I've just got a couple of Gretches. I've got one of these new ones that sound pretty good, and then I've got one of my old 70s Falcons that I got different pickups put in them because the pickups in the 70s were awful. It's like no output, right. Ink things. I've got a closet full of old pickups that are just useless. But so I got those days, back in the day I got Seymour Duncan to make pickups for me, but now there are other alternatives. But he used to make them for Joe Walsh and Brian Setzer and all the guys that played Gretches that needed the output to be, you know, modern level and still retain the kind of characteristic kind of, I guess what I call like a chimey quality from a Gretsch. You know, they have this kind of almost like church bell cathedral like quality, and so you don't just want pure volume, but you need it, you know, you need something.
Right.
And so right now I've got I've got two out. You know, I play about a quarter of the set. I mean, I've got a couple of these and I just pretty much out of the box. They sound good.
Okay.
You know, which is because I mean I'm not that precious about guitars. You know, I mean I use modern guitars and a lot of new guitars sound great. You know, I'm not really a purist or a collector. I've had some nice guitars, but I always seem to sell them. But I do have that Falcon that we recorded She Sells Sanctuary and All the Love album. The whole of the Love album's done on a Gretsch because I only owned one guitar.
Come on now!
For a period it was my only guitar because it was so expensive. It was kind of a commitment to the rock. You know, it took all my life savings at that point to buy it. When it was funny, kind of funny story. I bought it in London in 1982, and I'd had a double cutaway Falcon, but they were stereo. I like the way they feel. I still like those mid-70s double cutaway Falcons, but they were wired stereo.
Right.
And split was bizarre. I had to use a stereo lead. Into, you know, and I was using, they were quite traumatic. And I always wanted a single cutaway, was what I wanted. I could never find one in England because they were very rare and very expensive, you know, Gretches, and particularly White Falcons.
Sure.
And then I found a couple when this guy in London had a guitar store and he found a couple in California and had bought them and was having them shipped over, so I made an order for one of them. And it was back in 1982. It was £800, which to me was everything I had.
Sure.
Really, it literally was everything I had. It's about what in today's money, it's like $1,700 probably.
Yeah. So
that
was it then?
For me, that was huge. I mean, that was everything. You know, I had nowhere to live really. Me and that guitar, it's kind of trippy. I mean, you got to remember, put in context. I'm like living, you know, I was living in an office in London. Didn't even have like a bath. I had to go to the local YMCA to take a bath for a while. So all I had was the guitar and a haircut, good haircut. That was it.
That you did.
Which is probably all you need. I was in a band, like a high school band, and we were right around the time when punk happened, and we sort of half the band went punk, me included, because I was going to gigs, and half the band kind of resisted and went, this music's crap. You know, we need to stay digging, you know, on Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young,
right.
Neil Young, and we used to play a real, you know, but I did like the semi-acoustic thing. I remember going to see Nugent in Manchester in England in '77, and he had that Gibson Birdland, was it? And he had the Fender dual Showman amps and the whole feedback thing, and that was a big part of it for me as well. So the Gretsch kind of fell into that. And plus another thing that I wouldn't underestimate was the Stray Cats blew up, and Setzer was unbelievable. And then the final thing was Bow Wow Wow. Matthew Ashman had one, and I actually ended up finding that guitar after he was dead because some guy had it, and it had all writing all over it. And they were just the mid-70s kind of Baldwin era of Gretsch's.
Yeah.
They weren't anything fancy, you know. But I just liked the way they played. I preferred that to the 60s ones. And I had a 60s one in the Wildflower video. Again, I bought it, had it for a bit. I don't know where it went. I know I must have sold it or traded it. I moved through them mostly, you know. Steve Jones from the Pistols said, look, they're just bits of wood with strings on them. I mean, there was a White Falcon that was kind of that whole Sex Pistols, New York Dolls, Malcolm McLaren connection in '75 when he went from London and managed the New York Dolls for a few months, and then took some of the ideas and applied it to some of the young guys who were hanging out in his store in London, and they became the Sex Pistols. And that Falcon that Syl Sylvain used in the New York Dolls kind of wound its way around into the punk scene and got traded, and I think Joe Strummer had one from the Clash.
Yeah.
I think Steve Jones had a Falcon for like 10 minutes, you know. So there's, you know, they're just kind of like totemistic things, you know. If you're living in very dour, rainy, miserable England, the guitar, you can kind of, it's a bit like a kind of it's almost like a version of a hot rod.
Okay.
Like in the States, you know, it's like hot rod cars and the hobby cars and muscle cars. To me, it was like an interesting talking point. Plus, it plays differently and it makes you play differently. And in a lot of sense, you know, like Eat Your Feet's guitar has a song in it. You know, it kind of makes me write a certain way, which is cool. Because these, see this whammy bar, that's key. You'll never see me playing one with a flat Bigsby, because that has a whole different. It's a palm bar, has a whole different feel to what it does with the strings. Plus the length of the scale, the travel of the string. There's a lot of stuff that are different. You know, I won't use 60s Gretches. They're too like a Strat feel. This is a whole different animal. And if you're in a fire and you could only use a Fender, if you find a Jaguar or a Jazzmaster with a thing, they're not a million miles away from. I've used those occasionally, yeah, and they actually feel not 1,000 miles away from a Falcon.
Right.
They kind of sound good, you know. So which is nice because they're both the same company.
Exactly.
I can appreciate Fenders and occasionally dabble with them in the studio, but they're just not part of my lexicon, you know.
Right. Well, good deal. That's all we need.
Peace out.